Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Occult Think Tank. My name is Greg. In this video, I am going to be talking about something that I mentioned in my last video, and that is comparing two different texts. The Bible that I have shown you guys before, this stupid shit, and comparing that to the Enuma Elish, which is over here. This goes back to ancient Sumer and the epic of creation, the different tablets that were about those. But there is a few important things to note in this. The biggest being that this is copyrighted 2008. So this is a translation of. So even this wouldn't be something that I would say anybody should be. It literally has these words here, so that proves it. No, it doesn't prove a damn thing. All of this is largely speculation because one thing it does show is here is the cuneiform. None of us can read this shit. There is simply no way. Seeing that, we would have absolutely no idea what is being said. So don't try handing me this bullshit of, have you read it in the original? Can you read cuneiform? If you want to go back to original, you have to go back to cuneiform. And I don't know about you. I can't read this shit. To me, this is a bunch of scribbling. This does not. No. I'm not going to be able to read that shit. It has to be translated into English for my brain to be able to get it. The thing is, when I was going through this and looking through this, and this PDF is one that you can find very easily online just by typing in Enuma Elish PDF. And there will be various websites type of thing that you can go to. I haven't, that I had downloaded it, and I may make that available to people at some future point. But this is something you can find online. It's not like it's a secret. But you have to go down to about, it's around page 71 that it starts to go into the seven tablets of history of creation. And this, when this was written, it was written in the form of a poem. It was not told in the narrative story like we're used to in our culture. And that is why when it comes to shit like this, we're lacking in so many details that we can't really have a narrative for what motivated Cain, what was the issue between Cain and Abel, and so forth. All of that, we're lacking in so many details, we really can't reach a conclusion regarding these characters because the characters themselves are not flushed out. Because that's not the way poetry works. When a person is writing and doing poetry, they're not telling a narrative story. There's more prose, and it's almost like they're doing it in song form. Because there's some cultures that it's more of something that is sung, not something that is a story that is read or a story that is told. And that could have been how a lot of this shit was passed on, that it was constructed in the form of a song. And that may explain some things. But when it comes down to what this shit goes back to, there are some names that will be popping up frequently, like Anu. Anu is the father of Enki or Ea and Enlil. Enki or Ea is the father of Marduk. There are other names that I'm not totally sure on who is who. Like this one right here. I'm not sure if that is another name for Marduk or Enki, or if that is talking about Anu, the father. I have no idea. But the truth of the matter is, there is also reference to Tiamat. And that is something that I find very interesting, because that's actually how I came and found out about the band Tiamat, who I had interviewed the lead singer of back when I was doing internet radio. Because I did a search on Tiamat looking up things related to this, and I came across the band that is called Tiamat. So it's something that I ended up finding a band that I actually enjoy through research into stuff like this. Tiamat in this sense could be another name for the earth. I'm not totally sure. But this is largely, it is done in poem form. Now there is further down in this at around page 93, it gets into the Enuma Elish is a Babylonian or Mesopotamian myth of creation recounting the struggle between cosmic order and chaos. It is basically a myth of the cycle of seasons. And it is named after its opening words and was recited on the fourth day of the ancient Babylonian New Year's festival. That is an important factor to bear in mind, that there, like it says here, a similar earlier version in ancient Sumerian has Anu, Enlil, and Ninhurtara as the heroes, suggesting that this version was adapted to justify the religious practices in the cult of Marduk in Babylon. And Marduk was Enki's son. Enlil was the brother or half-brother of Enki. But this gets into like tablet 1, and here it is in a more readable form. But there is definitely a rivalry that was going on between Enki and Enlil. And that the one didn't give a damn about the humans that were created, the other one did. It is difficult to determine who is basically who, because the names and so forth have been changed and adopted by different cultures. So you really have to sift through the information that is being given. The problem with this shit is it has also been rewritten over and over and over again. And shit has also been changed, but people get dogmatic as hell about what is here. Even going so far as I have seen one person claiming that the man and woman that is mentioned here, so God created man in his own image, in the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. They tried claiming that there's one theory that the original man was a hermaphrodite. And my observation to that is, then I guess in the next verse, God is telling him, go fuck yourself. Because it says, be fruitful and multiply. The problem with hermaphrodites is only one of the sexual organs is actually turned on. That you simply can't have a hermaphrodite fucking themselves and getting pregnant. It simply doesn't work that way. So even suggesting something like that, to me, it's absurd. It's showing that you're not going by the basic biology that is simply part of the reality of the differences between male and female. It is not just sexual organs. This is why someone that is born a biological male transitioning into being a female and being this, I identify as a female, you can mouth whatever words you want. Your bone structure, your muscle structure, and so forth, and the amount of testosterone that's been pumping through your body for years will not change just because you identify as something else. And for somebody that was born a biological male to compete in an MMA situation against someone born a biological female, that biological female would be destroyed. Point blank. That's why when you have males that have transitioned to being female, they're breaking records as far as the female athletes, because they're not doing it with a female physiology. You want to talk about taking steroids as cheating in a sport type of situation? Being born a biological male and transitioning to a female years and years later, that's cheating. It is no different than taking steroids. In fact, it's worse than the aspect of somebody taking steroids before a competition, because that the person has had those hormones and so forth and the bone structure and muscle structure from birth. These are just the biological differences. But you can't, this is what I mean when I say people that try to defend this religious shit, they try to play word games. And that's what this comes down to, trying to insert the idea of a hermaphrodite. That is not suggested in this. Nowhere in there does it say that this God created one person, male and female. No. I had heard when I had interviewed Mark Powers the aspect of, in Judaism, the plural is simply not there, that they don't see it that way. I don't know. I know we look at it, and in English there is a very clear let us and the our, that there is a clear distinction that in English we draw. But it could be from the Hebrew aspect that the plural is simply not an issue. It's not something that is, just like Mark had said, in Hebrew there is no capital letters. That you don't have God in that sense. There wouldn't be a capitalized, because it's simply not the way it is. The thing is, then we're dealing with differences between English and Hebrew. The thing is, when you get into comparing and going over to things like this, you'll find that there are other differences in the story, and there would be other things that would be similar. That, like, here it goes into the birth of Marduk, because he was the son of Enki. It could also be in the aspect of genetic engineering, and EA is Enki. But in the aspect of the genetic engineering, which is what potentially this comes down to, is, and I'm just speculating with this, but this might have been where Enki was genetically engineering male and female, and doing things with the DNA in order to take them from the Cro-Magnon and Homo erectus to what we are today, and altering the DNA so that what he was creating would be able to reproduce and so forth, and not be like the lemur or the liger, which is a cross between a lion and a tiger, but the liger is sterile. And I think there's another animal that is, I think it's a donkey, that is sterile as well. That's a cross, or the mule is, that it's a cross between the horse and it might be I think the mule is sterile because it's a cross between the horse and the donkey. And that what would have had to have been done in the genetic engineering, if that would be the case of what happened with us, then Enki would have had to make sure that we wouldn't be like those other animals that are sterile. Because if that would be the case, then our species wouldn't have survived very fucking long. But the thing that I thought was interesting, and I can see a correlation with the aspect of, even though, like I had said in a previous video, we're lacking in so many details regarding Cain and Abel, because we only have, the story is only told largely in 8 verses till the death of Abel. That's not enough time to establish any type of identifying with a character or whatnot. But if you're doing a song or a poem, you're not going to go into the personal details about somebody, because in a poem or song, that really doesn't matter. But one thing I thought was interesting, I had listened to a video that the rapper Tom McDonald had done, where he was pretty much exposing the music industry. And it made me think of this story, because what he was talking about was how him and someone else that have made music, they've done everything independently. They have not gone through a third party. They're doing everything they have done, all the success he has come about independently. Well, because of that, the Billboard charts that list an artist, he can't be listed on there. Because Billboard doesn't go by information that he could give them, they go by a data company, and that data company only really wants to look at those that are having their music distributed by a third party. And the bottom line was, Tom McDonald and so forth had, in a series of emails, repeatedly tried, to give this data collection company the information they would need in order to give that to Billboard, but they refused to accept it because it didn't come in the manner that they were used to. Because everything him and the other artist were doing was done independently. And that made me think of this aspect where with Cain, his offering was not respected. I saw a very clear correlation between the music industry and the Lord of this story. That no matter what was going on, everything, all the work Cain did wasn't going to be respected. And that is the same thing that is going on with Tom McDonald and others that try to do things and make their music on the independent level when it comes to major record labels. And the idea of that Cain was pissed. Wouldn't you be? If you were, let's use the aspect of Tom McDonald, that you're this rapper that is extremely popular for those that like that kind of music, and no matter what you do, the information you're giving will not be accepted. And you're just going to get a runaround over and over. Wouldn't you be pissed? There have been people that have been killed for less. I mean, let's get real. In this world, and that wouldn't make, in this story, Cain a psychopath or a sociopath. It would make him human. This is where it gets downright ignorant for people to try and insert bullshit of their own into a story where we simply don't have enough information. And going by this shit, what we could clearly say is the dickhead in this is the God. I find it asinine that people want to try and look for ways to justify and excuse everything that the God figure is doing, because the truth of the matter is, if what they were looking at was this stuff, they wouldn't have, or I doubt that they would be getting as dogmatic with what is here. Because what is here is as much of a translation as what is here. It's just that this is put together in a format that looks better. Almost, you could even say, this could be like the record label produced product, and that this would be the more independent. But if you're going to try and act like the one is better than the other because it might be dressed up a little bit more, or even worse, because this one has a name attached to it, like the KJV, or like a record label, whereas this one does not. Those are superficial details that really should have no bearing on, is what is mentioned here sound in and of itself. And I haven't gone through this story to be able to determine the aspect of the story being told here. And there's a lot of areas like this that I don't know how I would make sense of it, because it's not even a sentence. It's not a complete thought. There is so much that it would have to be, the format would have to be in a way that would fit, like this, being able to read and be okay, that I could understand, even though the aspect of boar, monster, serpents, and so forth, yeah, I'm fine. I would find it a little bit tough to swallow. And roaring dragon she had clothed with terror. Those are ideas that are more poetic. Because how do you clothe something in terror? That's poetry. And there could be a message behind it, but it would take somebody really going through and trying to sift through. And that's what we have with this shit. Could there be something? Maybe. But what we have that we're able to look at, I don't see where it can or should be looked at as anything other than one myth versus another myth. This one that is not dressed up and put together in a way that looks nice and pretty, compared to this that is the well orchestrated and polished, complete with the publisher name type of thing. It's something that it doesn't change the validity or the value in the story that would be told. And that's the real issue, is what's the underlining story? That if you're really going to try to get at if there is a God and if it gives a damn about any of us, or if there's anything regarding an afterlife, I don't think we're going to find it in these ancient texts. These are things that can be interesting to look at, but at the end of the day, I don't see it giving people any type of answers. But I also don't see religion as giving people any type of answers either. But feel free to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. Talk to you later, people.